It's the third of the month. Somewhere right now, a person is moving money between accounts with the focused attention of someone diffusing something. Rent is due on the 5th, the credit card cycles on the 12th, the car payment pulls automatically on the 15th, and the automatic pull has been a source of background anxiety since the 14th became a date with a specific emotional texture. The math works. It works by approximately $200, and the $200 is not a cushion. It is the entire margin between a functional month and a phone call nobody wants to make. They are not bad with money. They are managing a system with no slack in it, the way an engineer manages a structure built to exact tolerances. One unexpected load and the tolerances are exceeded. The unexpected load arrives on its own schedule with complete indifference to the tolerances. This is what cash flow management actually looks like at every level of wealth, not the spreadsheet version, not the financial advisor's projected portfolio version. What it feels like to live inside the money as it moves. The decisions it forces, the decisions it makes for you when the margin runs out, and why the people managing the most cash are not always the ones sleeping best at night. Level 1, Survival Cash Flow, the negative space. The cash flow at this level is not managed, it is survived. The word management implies a degree of agency that the numbers do not support. Management requires options. Options require slack. Slack requires a gap between income and necessary expenditure that this level does not reliably produce. What you develop instead is something more sophisticated than management and more exhausting. Triage. The continuous, real-time prioritization of which obligations can be delayed, which cannot, which creditors will call and which will wait, which late fees are worth absorbing, and which will compound into something worse if left unaddressed. This is a cognitive operation running continuously in the background of every other activity. You were doing it at dinner. You were doing it at work. You were doing it in the specific way the mind runs calculations underneath conversations, without the conversation being aware the calculations are happening. The financial research calls it cognitive load. From inside, it feels like a permanent low-grade noise that never fully quiets. The hidden competence at this level is the precision. You know your numbers with an intimacy that people 3 levels above you do not have about their own finances, because their numbers have never demanded that level of attention to survive. You know exactly what clears on what day. You know the float window on every account. You know which utility will send a notice before disconnecting and which will not. That knowledge is expensive to acquire and useless to have, and represents a genuine and unacknowledged financial intelligence operating at the edge of a system that was not designed to support the people inside it. Level 2, Working Cash Flow, the paycheck architecture. The paycheck arrives and the money moves immediately. Not because you are impulsive, because the architecture of obligations was built around the paycheck interval, and the architecture activates the moment the deposit clears. Rent, car, insurance, phone, the subscriptions you have normalized into fixed costs without a meeting being called about whether they are worth the normalization. The groceries, the gas, the miscellaneous category that is never actually miscellaneous and is always higher than estimated and absorbs whatever the other categories left behind. By day 4, the paycheck has distributed itself across its obligations, and what remains is the number you will actually live on for the next 10 to 14 days. That number is functional. It is not generative. It will not become something larger by the end of the cycle. It will become 0 or close to 0, at which point the cycle resets. The trap at this level is the normalization of the cycle itself. The cycle feels like financial life because it is all of financial life that this level has experienced. The paycheck, the distribution, the remainder, the reset. The cycle has a rhythm. Rhythms are psychologically comforting even when they are not financially productive. You are not failing. You are running a cash flow system that was designed by the obligations you accumulated before you understood how to evaluate them. Every subscription was a small decision. The decisions assembled into an architecture. The architecture now runs the month. You did not design it. It designed itself out of 100 choices that each made sense individually and collectively built a cage with good Wi-Fi and automatic renewal. Level 3, Debt Service Cash Flow, the prior claim. Something happened to the cash flow at this level that fundamentally changed its character. A prior claim exists. Before you decide anything about this month's income, a portion of it is already allocated to the cost of decisions made in previous months. The student loan, the credit card, carrying a balance that has been there long enough to feel permanent. The car financed at a rate that made sense at the dealership and makes a different kind of sense on a spreadsheet 3 years later. The prior claim is not large enough to be a crisis. It is large enough to be a structural feature. It arrives every month with the reliability of income and extracts with the efficiency of a system that was designed to extract reliably. You manage around it. The cash flow has 2 zones now. The committed zone, fixed and non-negotiable. and the discretionary zone, everything that remains after the committed zone has been served. The discretionary zone is where your life actually happens. The discretionary zone is shrinking, not dramatically, incrementally. Each new committed expense reduces it by a fixed amount permanently until a prior debt is retired. The retirement of a prior debt feels like a raise. The danger is the impulse to fill the retired payment slot with a new committed expense the moment the slot opens. The slot opens. The lifestyle expands to fill it. The discretionary zone does not grow. The committed zone simply rotates its occupants. You are running in place with excellent consistency. Level 4. Conscious cash flow, the first architecture. Something cracked open. You built a system. Not a complicated system. A system with 3 components. What comes in, what must go out. What you decide to do with the difference before the difference decides for itself. The deciding before is the entire mechanism. Money that is not directed before it arrives gets directed by the environment it lands in. The environment is very good at finding uses for undirected capital. Subscriptions find it. Impulses find it. The restaurant that was a treat becomes a Tuesday. The Tuesday becomes the new baseline. And the new baseline requires maintenance spending to sustain. The system interrupts this. You pay yourself first. The phrase is not new. The execution is not complicated. The discipline of not touching the directed amount is the only hard part. And the hard part is genuinely hard in months where the directed amount would solve a problem that the remaining amount cannot solve. You solve the problem with the remaining amount. Sometimes that requires creativity. The creativity is the point. The constraint is the point. A system without a hard edge somewhere is not a system. It is a suggestion. Suggestions do not compound. The cash flow at this level is beginning to do something the previous levels never managed. It is generating a small and growing allocation to positions that do not require your continued labor to maintain. The positions are small. The direction is everything. You are no longer just earning and spending. You are beginning, quietly and without ceremony, to accumulate. Level 5, invested cash flow, the multiple streams. The income has more than one source now. The job still exists or the business still runs, but alongside it something else is generating a smaller number that arrives without a time for money exchange attached to it. The rental property that clears $400 a month after expenses. The dividend account that deposits quarterly without requiring a Tuesday of your labor. The small business equity that distributes when the business has a good quarter. These numbers are not large enough yet to replace the primary income. They are large enough to change the psychology of the primary income. When the primary income is the only income, its continuity is existential. Every negotiation with an employer happens in the shadow of what losing the income would mean. The shadow is visible to both parties in the negotiation. The shadow costs you leverage. When secondary income exists, the shadow shrinks. The negotiation changes. The willingness to walk changes. The terms you accept change. The multiple streams are not just additional income. They are a renegotiation of the power dynamic of the primary income, and that renegotiation is worth more than the secondary income's face value. You manage cash flow now across accounts with different characteristics, different timings, different tax treatments. The complexity increased. The options increased faster than the complexity. Options are the only form of wealth that other forms of wealth actually produce. Level 6, structural cash flow. The system runs itself. You stopped managing cash flow as a monthly exercise and started managing it as a system design problem. The question is no longer, where does the money go this month? The question is, what architecture produces the optimal movement of capital across time, tax environment, and risk profile automatically and without requiring your continuous attention to function? The payroll from the business funds the operating account. The operating account sweeps excess into a treasury management structure at the end of each week. The investment accounts receive automatic allocations on a schedule that was set once and does not require revisiting unless the underlying strategy changes. The tax reserves accumulate in a segregated account that earns while it waits for a quarterly estimated payment deadline. The cash flow is not managed, it is governed. You built the governance structure. The governance structure runs the system. You audit the system quarterly and adjust the parameters when the parameters require adjustment, and otherwise, your relationship with your own cash flow is managerial rather than operational. The freed attention migrated somewhere, into the business development that increased the primary income, into the investment research that identified the next position, into the personal life that the operational cash management was consuming at previous levels. You are not working less. You are working on different things. The things you work on now move the number rather than maintain it. The distinction is the entire architecture of financial progress. Level 7, capital allocation cash flow, the deployment problem, the problem inverted. At level 1, the problem was not enough cash flow. At level 7, the problem is too much cash requiring deployment into positions that justify the allocation at the scale the cash is arriving. This sounds like a complaint that will not receive sympathy, and it is not offered as a complaint. It is a genuine operational challenge with real consequences for the people who do not manage it well. Idle capital is not neutral. In an inflationary environment, idle capital is a declining asset wearing the costume of a stable one. The number stays still, everything else moves. The real return on undeployed capital is negative in most macro environments. You manage a team now, not just a financial advisor. A chief financial officer, a tax attorney, a trust and estate council, an investment committee, a family office structure, or its functional equivalent, assembled from advisors whose professional purpose is to ensure the capital works harder than a savings account while taking less risk than the portfolio's total scale can afford to absorb. The decisions at this level are not about whether to pay rent. They are about capital allocation strategy across asset classes, tax jurisdictions, liquidity profiles, and generational time horizons that extend past your own life expectancy. The cash flow at this level is civilizational in scale. It funds entities that employ people, build structures, finance businesses, and generate returns that are recycled into the next allocation cycle. You are no longer a person managing money. You are an institution making decisions that other institutions will feel. That weight does not feel the way the number suggests it should feel from outside. It feels like responsibility. Specifically, the kind of responsibility that wakes you at 3 a.m., not with fear, but with the particular alertness of someone whose decisions have consequences that extend past the room they are sitting in, and the decade they are living in, and the single life they were given to figure it all out in.